Lila lived in a small, quiet neighborhood where most people spent their days going to work, running errands, and returning home to rest. Her house was modest, not fancy, but it had a warmth that made anyone who visited feel welcome. Inside that house was an old piano, slightly worn, its keys a little yellowed from age, but it was the heart of the home. Lila had discovered it when she was very young, and from the moment she touched its keys, she felt something special. It was as if the piano was speaking to her, and she was learning a new language with each note. From the earliest days, Lila would sit for hours, pressing the keys softly at first, just to hear the sounds. She taught herself by listening to the radio, humming along, and copying the melodies she heard. Soon, the music she played began to carry emotion, a kind of story that seemed far beyond her years. Her fingers moved naturally, gracefully, almost as if they had a mind of their own. She could take a song she had heard once and play it perfectly the next day. Her family noticed this talent but thought it was just a phase, something every child could do. They didn't know that Lila had a gift that went far beyond ordinary skill. Lila did not play for others. She preferred solitude. The piano was her secret world, a place where she could express herself without worrying about judgment or applause. Some days, she would lose herself completely in the music, her eyes closed, her fingers flying over the keys, creating melodies that were both delicate and powerful. Her parents would sometimes peek in from the doorway, smiling quietly, amazed at the depth of feeling in her playing, though they rarely commented. They knew she was extraordinary, but they were careful not to push her, letting her grow naturally. Her neighborhood was a mixture of ordinary houses, with people living simple lives. Lila would often watch the world outside her window, seeing children play in the streets, neighbors chatting, and life moving slowly but steadily. She loved her quiet surroundings, and she loved the piano even more. It gave her a sense of freedom and a connection to something bigger than herself. She felt that when she played, the world outside disappeared, leaving only the music and her soul intertwined. Even though she was shy and reserved, Lila was confident when it came to the piano. She experimented with different styles, blending classical pieces with her own interpretations. She learned complex compositions, memorizing them with ease, and then adding little touches that made them uniquely hers. Her ability to understand music was not just technical. It was emotional. She could convey happiness, sadness, longing, and joy, all through her fingertips. Each melody was like a story she was telling without words. Despite her talent, Lila's life was simple. She attended school, did her homework, helped her parents with chores, and occasionally went out with friends. But music was always her first love. She would often sneak away to practice for hours after everyone else had gone to bed, letting the quiet of the night guide her fingers across the keys. Sometimes, she would fall asleep with her hands still resting on the piano, a soft tune lingering in the air. It was her sanctuary, a place where she could be herself without fear. Her gift was something she kept to herself, not because she was afraid of recognition, but because she valued the purity of music. She had seen how some people use talent for attention or fame, and that was never her goal. She played because it felt natural, because it filled her heart with something words could never express. Music was her companion, her comfort, and her escape. It was a part of her identity, something she could never give up, even if the world never knew of her talent. Occasionally, her parents would encourage her to take lessons or perform in small events, but Lila was hesitant. She didn't need an audience to feel accomplished. Her joy came from creating music, not from applause. Yet, deep inside, there was a tiny curiosity, a small whisper wondering what it would be like to share her gift with the world. She had never acted on it, thinking perhaps one day she would be ready. Lila's life continued in this quiet rhythm for many years. She grew older, more skilled, and her understanding of music deepened. She could play pieces that most professional pianists found challenging, and she did so with a grace that was both natural and mesmerizing. But still, she played only in secret, letting her fingers dance across the keys while the world outside remained unaware of the extraordinary talent within her home. One afternoon, A neighbor's child came by to borrow a book and heard Lila playing. She paused, frozen, listening to the beautiful, emotional music filling the room. The child was amazed and told her own parents, who were equally impressed. Word began to spread slowly in whispers that there was a young girl down the street who could play the piano like a professional. Lila's parents were careful to manage this attention, ensuring their daughter's world remained as peaceful as ever. They wanted her to enjoy music without pressure. Lila herself remained mostly unaware of the quiet admiration growing around her. She continued her daily life, attending school, helping at home, and playing in the evenings. Yet, the thought that someone outside her family might one day hear her play lingered in her mind. She imagined the reactions, the surprise, and perhaps even the disbelief. But she was not yet ready to step out of her private world. For now, the piano was her companion, her secret friend, and her joy. At school, Lila's talent was hidden beneath her quiet demeanor. She wasn't the most outgoing or popular student, but she was kind, thoughtful, and always willing to help others. Her classmates had no idea about the musical genius that lived among them. Occasionally, during music class, she would perform a piece flawlessly, but she never drew attention to herself. Teachers were impressed, but Lila shrugged it off, not seeking recognition. Music was personal, a gift she treasured quietly. Even her closest friends knew little about the depth of her talent. She would sometimes play softly when they visited, but never in a way that showcased her full abilities. She liked the intimacy, the shared secret, the connection that music created without needing to speak. Her friends enjoyed it, thinking she was talented, but they could not imagine the extraordinary level of skill she truly possessed. Despite her quiet life, there was something magnetic about Lila. People who met her felt a sense of calm and warmth, a quiet strength that drew others in. It was not loud or showy, but it was there, subtle and powerful, much like her music. She had learned to live simply, appreciating the small joys of life, yet nurturing a talent that could one day astonish the world. Her story was only beginning, and the secret piano prodigy continued to play, unaware that her life was about to change in ways she had never imagined. One bright morning, Lila received an unexpected letter. It had no return address, only an elegant stamp and her name written in flowing script. She hesitated for a moment before opening it, curious but cautious. Inside was an invitation to perform at a grand gala in the heart of the city. The letter explained that the event would host important people, wealthy patrons, famous musicians, and critics, and that they were seeking a pianist to provide a special performance. Lila felt a mixture of excitement and fear. She had never imagined performing in front of such an audience, and the thought of all those eyes on her made her heart race. Her parents noticed her nervousness and tried to reassure her. They reminded her that she had a gift, a talent that could inspire people if shared. Yet Lila was hesitant. She loved the piano deeply, but she had always kept it private. The idea of leaving her quiet world behind, even for one evening, felt overwhelming. Still, there was a quiet curiosity inside her, a small spark that wondered what it would feel like to play for others, to see their reactions, and to experience music beyond her room. As the days passed, the gala drew closer. Lila began to practice more intentionally, choosing pieces that could show her style while remaining true to her emotions. She experimented with different melodies, blending classical compositions with her own improvisations. Each evening, she would sit at the piano and imagine the grand hall, the glittering lights, and the audience waiting. She pictured their faces, trying to guess their reactions, and felt both excitement and fear at the thought. Her parents tried to create a supportive environment, making space for her to practice without interruptions. They brought her tea and snacks, and sometimes simply watched from a distance, proud of her dedication. Lila's friends, unaware of the gala at first, noticed her intense focus and occasional nervous glances. She did not share much, only hinting that something important was coming. Yet the secret of her invitation added to the tension she felt, making every practice session both thrilling and nerve-wracking. Finally, the day of the gala arrived. Lila wore a simple but elegant dress, one that made her feel confident without drawing unnecessary attention. She traveled with her parents to the Grand Hall, a magnificent building filled with chandeliers, polished floors, and walls adorned with gold and art. The sheer size of the hall and the luxury of the surroundings made her stomach twist with nerves. She had never seen anything like it, and she felt both out of place and honored to be there. Inside, the audience was beginning to gather. People whispered to each other, dressed in the finest attire, their eyes curious and sometimes skeptical. Lila could feel their gaze as she walked toward the piano, though she did her best to focus on the keys. She noticed a few prominent figures, critics with sharp eyes, musicians with confident postures, and wealthy patrons with subtle smiles. Some glanced at her quietly, questioning why someone so modest-looking was about to perform. Their whispers and subtle expressions reminded her of the importance of this moment, and the pressure weighed on her shoulders. As she approached the piano, a hush fell over the room. Lila paused, taking a deep breath and placing her fingers on the keys. The first notes were soft, delicate, almost like a whisper in the hall. She felt the familiar comfort of the piano beneath her hands, and for a moment, the intimidating crowd seemed to vanish. It was just her and the music. She let herself play freely, feeling each note, each chord, each rhythm as if it carried her own heart into the room. The audience shifted in their seats, some leaning forward, drawn in by the beauty of her opening notes. Her fingers moved with confidence and grace, creating melodies that were both precise and full of emotion. Lila had chosen pieces that allowed her to show her skill without sounding mechanical. And as she played, she added her own subtle touches, small flourishes that made the music feel alive. The initial skepticism in the audience began to fade, replaced by quiet curiosity and wonder. Among the crowd, some individuals who had doubted her ability began to pay closer attention. They had expected a simple performance, perhaps a basic melody played competently, but what they heard was far beyond their expectations. Lila's music had a depth that touched emotions they did not anticipate, a level of artistry that seemed rare even among seasoned performers. A few whispers of amazement circulated, but most remained silent, captivated by the unfolding performance. The gala continued, and Lila moved seamlessly from one piece to another. She had carefully prepared each section to create a flow of emotion, beginning with gentle melodies and gradually building toward more powerful, dramatic compositions. Her ability to control tempo, dynamics, and expression made the music feel alive, as if the piano itself were speaking through her. Every note carried intention, every pause held significance. The audience could feel the story she was telling, though no words were spoken. As she played, Lila's nervousness began to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence. She realized that the audience was not an enemy, but a group of people ready to receive her music, to share in the emotions she conveyed. Her hands moved instinctively, her mind focused entirely on the piano and the feelings she wanted to express. The grand hall seemed to disappear, leaving only the connection between her and the listeners. It was a moment of pure artistry, one that transcended fear and doubt. Throughout the performance, Lila noticed small reactions from the audience. Slight smiles, eyes widening, heads tilting in appreciation. She could sense the gradual shift in their perception, from doubt to admiration. Even those who had initially questioned her presence could not hide their astonishment. Each note she played built this transformation, a silent communication between her heart and theirs. Music had become the bridge, connecting the secret pianist to a world that had once seemed distant and unattainable. By the time she finished the last piece, the hall was completely silent for a brief moment. The audience sat in awe, processing the experience they had just witnessed. Lila took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief, pride, and humility. She had shared her gift, and the impact was evident. The skeptics were no longer skeptical, and even the most critical observers seemed moved by her talent. In that moment, Lila understood the power of music, not just as a performance, but as a language of emotion, capable of reaching hearts without words. The silence was broken by a slow, growing applause. At first gentle, then louder and more enthusiastic, until the entire hall erupted in cheers and clapping. Lila's parents beamed with pride, tears in their eyes, while other guests stood to show their admiration. The critics and musicians who had doubted her now nodded in acknowledgement, some even approaching to congratulate her personally. It was a moment of validation, not only for her technical skill, but for the emotional truth she had conveyed through music. After the performance, Lila was approached by several influential figures who expressed interest in her future. They invited her to play at other prestigious events, offered mentorships, and spoke of opportunities she had never imagined. Lila listened politely, feeling both humbled and excited. She knew that her life had changed in a significant way, yet she remained grounded, aware that the piano would always be her true companion, no matter the audience or the recognition. That night, as she returned home, Lila reflected on the experience. The gala had been daunting, but it had also shown her the joy of sharing her music with others. She realized that the fear of judgment, while natural, could not outweigh the fulfillment that came from expressing her gift. Her secret world had expanded, and the music she loved so dearly had found new ears, new hearts, and new appreciation. The journey that had begun in quiet solitude now had a beginning in the wider world, full of promise and possibility. Lila continued to practice in the days following the gala, but now with a sense of purpose and connection. She understood that her talent was not only a personal joy but a gift that could touch others. The invitation had been the first step into a new chapter of her life, one that combined her passion with the opportunity to inspire and move people through music. Her story was unfolding, and the secret piano prodigy had begun to step out of the shadows, ready to face the world with grace, humility, and the profound power of her music. The day of the gala was finally here, and Lila felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She had practiced for weeks, imagining every possible scenario, yet nothing could fully prepare her for the reality of performing in front of such an elite audience. The grand hall was even more magnificent than she had pictured. Chandeliers sparkled like stars above, the walls were adorned with golden frames and paintings, and the polished floors reflected the light, making the entire space glow. Guests were arriving in elegant attire, their laughter and chatter filling the air with a mixture of sophistication and anticipation. As Lila walked through the hall with her parents, she could feel the eyes of many on her. Some glanced curiously, some skeptically. She noticed a few critics near the front, their expressions guarded, and musicians in the crowd who seemed quietly confident, expecting an ordinary performance. Lila felt a twinge of anxiety, knowing that all her years of practice and hidden talent would be put to the test in this one moment. She took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart, and reminded herself that the piano was her friend, her partner in this journey. The piano was set near the center of the hall, and as Lila approached it, a hush fell over the crowd. She could feel the weight of their attention, their unspoken expectations pressing down on her. She paused, letting the silence settle, and positioned her hands on the keys. The familiar feel of the piano reassured her, and for a brief moment, the fear melted away. She could almost imagine the hall as empty, with only her and the music, allowing her to focus entirely on the notes and the emotion they carried. When she began to play, the first few notes were soft and tentative, almost like a gentle greeting to the audience. She chose to start with a simple piece, one that showcased clarity and expression without overwhelming the listeners. As she continued, her confidence grew. Her fingers moved gracefully, her touch precise yet full of feeling. The audience, initially skeptical, began to lean in, drawn by the beauty and subtle complexity of her performance. The whispers of doubt were replaced by quiet attention, as everyone realized that the young woman before them was not ordinary. Lila could sense the change in the atmosphere. The critics who had been watching her with critical eyes now showed signs of intrigue. Musicians who had expected a basic performance were nodding subtly, appreciating the depth and skill she demonstrated. Even among the wealthy patrons, who often attended events more for social appearances than genuine interest, there were expressions of surprise and admiration. The music had begun to speak for itself, transcending appearances, attire, and social status. She had prepared a sequence of pieces for the evening, each chosen to convey a range of emotions and to demonstrate her versatility. After the opening, she moved into a more challenging composition, a piece that required both technical skill and expressive interpretation. Her fingers danced across the keys with precision, executing rapid passages flawlessly while maintaining a sense of grace and emotion. The audience was captivated, many unaware of how skilled she truly was until they heard the subtle nuances and emotional depth of her playing. Lila's heart raced, but she felt a growing sense of exhilaration. The fear that had gripped her earlier was replaced by a sense of connection with the listeners. Music, she realized, was not just about technique or performance. It was about communication, about sharing a piece of herself with the world. Each note she played carried intention, and she could feel the audience responding in their own way, whether through subtle gestures, quiet murmurs of appreciation, or the intensity of their focused attention. Among the crowd, a few individuals who had openly doubted her ability shifted in their seats. Their skepticism slowly transformed into fascination. One critic, who had appeared stern and unconvinced, now leaned forward, listening intently, eyes fixed on the keys. A renowned musician in the audience exchanged a glance with a colleague, both acknowledging the rare talent displayed before them. Even those who had come purely for the gala's social aspect were drawn into the music, caught by the elegance and emotion of Lila's performance. Lila continued to move seamlessly from one piece to another, her fingers and mind working in perfect harmony. She allowed herself small moments of improvisation, subtle variations that added a personal touch to familiar compositions. The audience, sensing the authenticity of her expression, responded with quiet admiration. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them, while others leaned slightly forward, unable to take their eyes off the young pianist. Lila felt the energy in the room, the unspoken bond forming between her and each listener. As the evening progressed, the complexity and emotional range of her selections increased. Lila played pieces that conveyed joy, sorrow, longing, and triumph, seamlessly transitioning between moods. The audience experienced a journey through her music, each piece building upon the last. She felt a deep satisfaction in this exchange, knowing that her years of practice and dedication were not only evident but moving people in ways that words could not capture. The hall was filled with a silent understanding, a shared experience that transcended social divides. Despite the grandeur of the event and the high expectations, Lila remained grounded. She focused on the piano, on the music flowing through her hands, and on the emotions she wanted to convey. The crowd's reactions, while noticeable, did not distract her. She had learned over the years that true performance was about connection, not approval. The more she immersed herself in the music, the more the audience became captivated, drawn into a world she created with each keystroke. By the time she reached the final piece of her program, Lila had fully won over the audience. The initial whispers of doubt were gone, replaced by awe and admiration. She played with a level of confidence and grace that belied her years, expressing a depth of feeling that resonated with everyone present. Each note seemed to float in the air, carrying the essence of her talent and the emotions she wished to share. The audience was completely engaged, silent except for the soft breathing and occasional involuntary gasps of amazement. As the last notes lingered in the grand hall, Lila allowed herself a moment of stillness. She lifted her hands from the keys, feeling the weight of the experience settle around her. The audience sat in stunned silence, processing the performance they had just witnessed. The young pianist, who had entered the hall with nervous anticipation, had transformed it into a space of shared emotion and wonder. Her secret talent, once hidden, had been revealed in a way that could not be ignored. The silence broke slowly, with a single clap, then another, until the hall erupted into a wave of applause. Guests stood to their feet, cheering and clapping with genuine admiration. Lila's parents watched with tears in their eyes, overwhelmed by pride and happiness. Even the critics and musicians who had questioned her abilities approached to offer congratulations, their expressions filled with respect and recognition. It was a moment of validation, not only for her technical skill, but for the emotional truth she had conveyed through music. After the performance, Lila was surrounded by people expressing their amazement and interest. Invitations to perform at other prestigious events were extended, mentorships offered, and opportunities opened up that she had never imagined. Yet she remained humble, aware that her true fulfillment came from the act of creating music and connecting with listeners on a personal level. The gala had shown her the power of sharing her gift, and she felt a renewed sense of purpose and possibility. That night, as Lila returned home, she reflected on the experience. The grand hall, the audience, and the applause were all part of a new chapter in her life. She realized that her secret world of music had grown to include others, and that the joy of playing was even greater when it could be shared. The gala had been a test of courage and talent, and she had passed with grace and authenticity. Her journey as a secret piano prodigy stepping into the wider world had truly begun, and the path ahead was filled with promise, discovery, and the enduring magic of music. As Lila continued her performance, the atmosphere in the grand hall transformed completely. What had started as curiosity and skepticism among the audience was now replaced with deep attention and admiration. Each note she played carried emotion, and the hall seemed to listen with bated breath. Lila was fully immersed in the music, her fingers moving gracefully across the keys, coaxing melodies that were at once delicate, powerful, and mesmerizing. The piece she had chosen now was more challenging than anything she had played publicly. It required a perfect balance of speed, precision, and expression. As her hands moved faster, creating cascades of notes that danced through the air, the audience felt the intensity of the performance. Some held their breath, captivated by the mastery and the emotion woven into each chord. Lila could sense their attention, not as pressure, but as energy feeding her performance. She let herself feel the music completely, trusting her instincts and the countless hours of private practice that had brought her here. At first, some guests shifted in their seats, trying to adjust to the sudden intensity of the music. But gradually, even the most skeptical faces softened, their eyes following the flow of the melodies. The critics in the front rows, who had initially raised eyebrows, now leaned forward, clearly impressed by the technical skill and emotional depth on display. A renowned musician whispered to a colleague, nodding in quiet appreciation, acknowledging the rare talent that had walked into the room. As Lila moved into the heart of the composition, she allowed herself to add subtle improvisations. These were moments where her creativity could shine, where she could express feelings beyond the written notes. Each variation was deliberate, yet flowing naturally, as if the piano and she were in perfect conversation. The audience felt it intuitively, sensing that the music was no longer just a performance but a living expression of someone's soul. The room was filled with a profound silence, the kind that only occurs when people are completely absorbed. Some closed their eyes, letting the music envelop them, while others leaned forward, mesmerized by the interplay of emotion and skill. Lila noticed subtle changes, tiny smiles, eyes widening in surprise, heads tilting as listeners tried to follow her intricate passages. Every small reaction encouraged her to play with even more feeling, deepening the connection between her and the audience. In the middle of the piece, Lila transitioned into a section that was slower, more reflective. The music became tender, almost vulnerable, and it struck the hearts of those listening. Some guests found their emotions stirred, feeling melancholy, nostalgia, or joy in the subtle shifts of harmony. Lila's playing was not just about technique. It was about communication. She was telling a story without words, and the audience understood the narrative in ways that were personal and profound. A few of the critics who had been reserved from the beginning now nodded slightly, acknowledging the brilliance of her interpretation. Musicians who had been watching closely began to recognize the unique style and emotional authenticity that Lila brought to the piano. Even those who had arrived without particular interest found themselves captivated, unable to pull their attention away from the performance. The music had become a shared experience, a bridge connecting the pianist and everyone in the hall. As the piece built toward its climax, Lila's fingers moved with lightning speed, executing rapid passages that seemed almost impossible to follow. The notes intertwined with precision, each chord resonating with clarity and power. The audience felt the intensity rising, some leaning forward, some gripping the edges of their seats, and others simply holding their breath. Lila's heart raced, but she felt a serene focus, as if the music and her being were inseparable. She allowed herself to pour every ounce of emotion into the performance, trusting the piano to carry her expression. The hall seemed to respond to the crescendo, the energy vibrating through the room. It was not just applause or attention. It was a palpable sense of wonder and admiration. Lila noticed subtle changes in the audience's posture. Heads tilted, shoulders relaxed, eyes shining with amazement. The performance was no longer about proving herself. It had become a shared journey, an intimate connection between artist and listener. Every note she played communicated sincerity, vulnerability, and brilliance simultaneously. When she reached the final measures, Lila softened the music, bringing it back to a gentle, lingering conclusion. The final chords floated in the air, delicate and profound, and she held them just long enough for the audience to feel the full weight of the moment. Then, as her fingers lifted from the keys, a deep, reverent silence filled the hall. It was a silence of awe, of people absorbing the performance, trying to comprehend what they had just witnessed. For a few heartbeats, no one moved or spoke, allowing the music's impact to settle fully. Then the applause began. At first, tentative, then growing steadily until it filled the hall with sound. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes, others smiling in pure admiration. Lila's parents were beaming, overwhelmed with pride and emotion. Even the critics and musicians who had been reserved approached her with words of praise, their respect and amazement evident. It was clear that she had transformed the audience's perception with her talent, humility, and expressive music. The experience was transformative for Lila as well. She felt a mixture of relief, joy, and fulfillment. Years of secret practice and private dedication had culminated in this moment, and it had exceeded even her own expectations. She realized that the piano, which had been her safe haven and private world, could also become a bridge to others, allowing her to share her passion and touch hearts. The performance had shown her that fear and hesitation were natural, but courage and authenticity could lead to moments of profound connection. After the performance, many guests approached to express their admiration personally. Some offered opportunities to perform at other prestigious events, while others spoke of mentorship and guidance. Lila listened with gratitude and humility, aware that her journey had only just begun. While the recognition was exciting, she understood that her true reward was in the act of playing, in the joy of creating music and communicating emotion. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, ready to embrace the opportunities ahead, while remaining true to her love of the piano. That night, as she returned home, Lila reflected on what had just occurred. The gala had been a test of courage, talent, and self-expression. She had faced an audience full of doubt and skepticism, yet she had shared her music fully and authentically. In doing so, she had not only impressed them but had also connected with them on a deeper emotional level. It was a reminder that talent, when nurtured with dedication and expressed with sincerity, could transcend boundaries and create unforgettable experiences. Lila knew that this was just the beginning. The experience had opened doors and possibilities that she had never considered. She could now see a future where her music reached more people, touching lives in ways she had only dreamed of. Yet she remained grounded, aware that her love for the piano and the joy it brought her would always come first. The performance at the gala had shown her the power of sharing her gift, and she was ready to explore the path that lay ahead, guided by her passion, humility, and the enduring magic of music. As Lila's performance continued, the room became completely absorbed in her music. The initial skepticism from some guests had vanished, replaced by a quiet reverence. The audience sat in attentive silence, every ear straining to catch the nuances of her playing. Her fingers moved with grace and precision, executing complex passages with a natural flow that made the music seem effortless. But it was more than technical skill that held the room in its spell. It was the emotion she infused into every note, the story she told without saying a word. The next piece she played was slower, more lyrical, with a gentle rhythm that allowed her to explore the depth of feeling behind each note. As the melody unfolded, she could sense the audience leaning in, some closing their eyes, others letting their imaginations drift with the music. A few guests, unaccustomed to being moved by a live performance, felt tears welling in their eyes. The power of Lila's playing reached them in ways that words could not. It was as if she was speaking directly to each person, touching hearts individually yet collectively. Her hands moved with both delicacy and strength, conveying joy, sorrow, and longing in a seamless flow. The transitions between movements were smooth, each shift bringing a new emotion, a new story. Some guests whispered softly to each other, astonished at the level of talent before them. Even seasoned musicians who had attended many performances were quietly impressed, nodding subtly at her phrasing and technique. Every aspect of her performance, from touch to tempo to emotional expression, revealed a depth of understanding rarely seen in someone so young. At one point, Lila played a section that demanded rapid fingerwork, intricate runs, and precise control. It was a moment that could have been purely about technical skill, but she infused it with feeling, giving it life and energy. The audience felt the excitement and tension build, their eyes following her hands as they moved in a blur of motion, producing a sound that was both complex and beautiful. Some gasped softly, amazed at how a young pianist could command such power and control. The room felt alive, vibrating with the music, yet completely silent in awe. Lila allowed herself a few improvisational flourishes, subtle variations that gave the pieces her personal touch. These moments were not planned but came naturally, a reflection of her deep connection to the piano and the emotions she wanted to express. The audience sensed the authenticity, feeling the spontaneity and heart behind each note. Even those who were unfamiliar with the compositions could feel the intent and passion, understanding on a level beyond technical knowledge. As the performance progressed, the emotional intensity increased. Lila played a section that was hauntingly beautiful, slow and reflective, drawing the listeners into a quiet, intimate space. The sound of the piano filled every corner of the grand hall, yet it was soft, almost whispering, as if sharing secrets only the heart could hear. Some audience members were visibly moved, eyes glistening with tears, caught off guard by the raw emotion conveyed so effortlessly. The power of music to communicate without words became fully apparent, and the room held its collective breath, suspended in the moment. Throughout the performance, Lila could feel the subtle shifts in the audience's energy. Where there had been doubt or curiosity, there was now admiration and wonder. People were responding instinctively, some leaning forward, others closing their eyes, some holding their hands over their hearts. Even the critics, who had approached the evening with skepticism, were visibly impressed. Their expressions softened, and they exchanged glances, silently acknowledging the rare talent before them. It was clear that the young pianist had captured their attention in a way that few performers ever could. The music gradually built toward the final section, a powerful crescendo that demanded both technical skill and emotional depth. Lila's fingers moved with precision, each note resonating in the hall with clarity and richness. The audience felt the intensity growing, their emotions rising along with the music. Some leaned forward in anticipation, others closed their eyes to fully absorb the experience. The connection between pianist and listeners was palpable, an unspoken bond formed through the shared journey of the music. As the final notes approached, Lila softened her touch, bringing the piece to a gentle, lingering conclusion. The last chord hung in the air, fading slowly, leaving the audience in a quiet, reflective silence. For a few moments, no one moved, as if everyone was holding their breath, savoring the beauty and emotion that had just been shared. Lila sat at the piano, her hands resting lightly on the keys, feeling the weight and significance of the moment. It was a silence filled with respect, awe, and profound appreciation. Then, the room erupted into applause. It started slowly, one hand clapping, then another, until the entire hall was filled with sound. People rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, and expressing their amazement. Some had tears in their eyes, others were smiling broadly, and a few were shaking their heads in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. Lila's parents were overwhelmed with pride, their hearts full of joy at seeing their daughter's talent recognized in such a powerful way. The critics and musicians approached her, offering sincere congratulations and praise, acknowledging the depth and skill of her performance. Among the audience, some influential patrons approached to speak with Lila, expressing interest in her future and offering opportunities she had never imagined. Invitations to perform at other prestigious events, mentorships from accomplished musicians, and recommendations for music programs were extended. Lila listened with gratitude and humility, understanding that her secret talent had now opened doors to a wider world. Yet she remained grounded, knowing that the true joy of music came not from recognition but from the act of creating and sharing it. After the performance, Lila reflected on the experience as she returned home. The gala had been a test of courage, skill, and self-expression. She had faced an audience full of doubt, curiosity, and expectation, yet she had given herself fully to the music, allowing it to speak for her. The reactions of the audience, from tears to applause to whispered admiration, were a testament to the power of music to touch hearts and connect people on a deep level. Lila understood that her journey as a pianist was only beginning, and that sharing her gift could have a profound impact on others. The performance also taught Lila about the importance of authenticity and emotional expression. Technical skill alone could impress, but it was the honesty and depth of feeling that truly moved the audience. She realized that music was a language, one that could transcend social status, age, and background. The experience gave her confidence, not in seeking fame or recognition, but in knowing that her music could inspire and touch people in ways words could not. In the days following the gala, Lila continued to practice with renewed purpose. She experimented with new compositions, explored different styles, and allowed her creativity to flourish. The knowledge that her music could reach and affect others inspired her to push her abilities further, to grow not only as a pianist but as an artist. The connections she had made and the reactions she had witnessed were reminders that talent, when nurtured with dedication and expressed with sincerity, could create unforgettable experiences and open doors to new opportunities. Lila's story, once hidden in the quiet of her home, was beginning to unfold in the world outside. She had stepped beyond the private sanctuary of her piano and into the hearts of those who had listened. The gala was a turning point, a moment when her secret talent had become a shared gift, leaving an audience amazed, moved, and inspired. It was a moment that would be remembered by those present and a memory that would shape Lila's journey as a pianist forever. After the thunderous applause at the gala, Lila felt a mixture of relief, pride, and quiet joy. She had given her all, sharing her secret talent with a room full of strangers, and the response had been overwhelming. Guests approached her with kind words, compliments, and even offers of guidance and opportunity. It was a whirlwind of emotions. Yet amid the excitement, Lila remained grounded, understanding that her love for music had been the true reason for her success. This was not about fame or recognition, but about sharing something deeply personal and beautiful. Her parents walked beside her, proud smiles on their faces, their hearts swelling with the realization that their daughter's quiet dedication had touched so many. They had supported her all these years, giving her space to grow, and now they could see the reward of patience and care. Lila felt a warmth knowing they had been there, witnessing the moment she had dreamed of in secret. The pride in their eyes gave her a sense of security and belonging, reminding her that while applause was gratifying, it was the love and encouragement of her family that mattered most. The gala organizers approached Lila with invitations to perform at other prestigious events. There were offers from concert halls, music festivals, and private patrons who had been deeply moved by her performance. Some suggested mentorship with renowned pianists, promising guidance and growth. Lila listened with gratitude, carefully considering each opportunity. She felt honored and humbled, yet she remained true to herself, understanding that her primary focus was the music and the joy it brought, not the titles or accolades that might come with it. As the night drew to a close, Lila took a moment to reflect quietly in a corner of the grand hall. She looked around, seeing guests still buzzing with admiration, sharing their experiences of the performance with each other. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from countless hours of solitary practice, learning from recordings, experimenting with melodies, and refining her skills in secret. Each moment had contributed to this one evening, where her music had spoken louder than words ever could. Lila realized that her secret world had expanded. For years, she had played only for herself, finding comfort and expression in the quiet of her home. Now, she understood that sharing her talent could bring joy, inspiration, and emotion to others. The music that had once been her private companion had become a bridge, connecting her to people she might never have met, touching hearts and leaving lasting impressions. This insight filled her with a renewed sense of purpose, inspiring her to continue her journey with dedication and love. The days following the gala were a blend of excitement and reflection. Lila continued to practice diligently, exploring new compositions and refining her existing repertoire. She experimented with different styles, incorporating improvisation and personal expression into each piece. The memory of the audience's reactions lingered in her mind, motivating her to push boundaries and discover new dimensions of her musical voice. She felt a sense of responsibility to her gift, understanding that her talent had the power to affect lives, and she wanted to honor it fully. Lila also spent time responding to the opportunities presented to her. She met with mentors who offered guidance, attended small performances to gain experience, and began to plan her next steps carefully. Each decision was made thoughtfully, with a balance between ambition and authenticity. She knew that her music should remain genuine, a reflection of her emotions and experiences, rather than a pursuit of recognition alone. The guidance she received helped her refine her technique, explore new musical ideas, and approach performance with confidence and poise. Despite the growing recognition, Lila maintained her humble nature. She continued to live simply, valuing the quiet moments of reflection, practice, and connection with her family. Music remained the core of her life, a source of joy, comfort, and self-expression. The acclaim and opportunities were meaningful, but they were secondary to the love she felt for the art itself. Her story was not just about talent, but about dedication, humility, and the courage to share her gift with the world. As Lila prepared for future performances, she also thought about the impact her music could have on others. She considered teaching and mentoring, hoping to inspire young musicians, as she had once been inspired by recordings and examples from her past. She imagined students discovering their own voices through the piano, learning not just technique, but the power of emotional expression. Lila understood that talent was meaningful when it could inspire and nurture others, creating a ripple effect that extended beyond her own accomplishments. In private moments, Lila reflected on her journey. She remembered the countless evenings spent alone at the piano, the joy of discovering a new piece, the excitement of mastering a difficult passage, and the comfort of expressing herself through music. These memories were the foundation of her confidence, the reason she had been able to share her gift so authentically at the gala. She realized that the quiet dedication, the hours of practice, and the passion she had cultivated in solitude had prepared her for this moment and would continue to guide her in the future. Lila also recognized the importance of balance. While her talent had brought her recognition, she understood that life included many aspects beyond music: family, friendships, learning, and personal growth. She embraced the idea that her gift was a part of her identity but not the entirety of who she was. This awareness allowed her to remain grounded, navigating opportunities and challenges with clarity and integrity. As time passed, Lila's reputation as a pianist grew. She performed at various events, each performance carrying the same sincerity and emotion that had captivated the gala audience. She became known not only for her technical skill but for the depth and authenticity of her expression. Audiences were moved by her music, critics praised her artistry, and young musicians looked to her as an example of dedication and passion. Yet Lila remained humble, always remembering her beginnings and the private world where she had first discovered the magic of the piano. Her story inspired others, showing that talent, when nurtured with care and shared with sincerity, could transcend expectations and make a lasting impact. Lila had transformed from a secret pianist playing in the quiet of her home to a musician whose art touched hearts and minds far beyond her neighborhood. The journey had been one of patience, dedication, courage, and love for music, and it continued to unfold with each performance, each note, and each connection she made. In the end, Lila understood that her true accomplishment was not the applause or recognition, but the ability to communicate through her music. She had learned that sharing one's gift, no matter how private or hidden, could inspire, move, and connect people in ways words never could. The secret piano prodigy had stepped into the world, leaving high society audiences speechless, not through showiness or ambition, but through the authenticity, passion, and heart she poured into every note. And as she continued her journey, Lila remained true to herself, her music, and the enduring power of the art that had always been her companion, her joy, and her voice.